Hi, everyone. Thank you to all of our listeners tuning in and checking this podcast out. My name is Selena Pierman, and it is a pleasure to have Heather Woody joining with me on our episode today. For those of you just getting to know the workplace chameleon, check out our previous sessions that had more about what we are and what we're about. In summary, my fascination is how we take all sorts of personalities, characteristics, and traits in people at work and figure out how we do this as part of organizations each and every day. I'm fascinated about how we enter, thrive, and even exit organizations at all different times of our life. So, this podcast is meant to be informative, hopefully, providing you some moments of thoughtfulness or reflection. But also, as you'll soon discover from some good banter in this episode, we also aim to want to make it funny and applicable so that there's something you can do with it as soon as you have logged off from the episode. So, welcome everybody. And it is, as I mentioned, my pleasure to welcome Heather Woody. Heather, happy to have you on the show today.
Hello, Selena. It is just a pleasure to be here, and I'm so honored to be able to be one of your guests today. As you know, and I've probably told you a million times, I think so highly of you. I'm just thrilled to pieces to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So Heather and I have crossed paths now for a long time. We both got a couple of decades, if we will, in this field of people and organizations. And I've come to respect her work so much. Our listeners can find more about Heather at heatherwoody.com. Heather, would you tell us a little bit about your background and just what drives your passion in this field?
Yes, absolutely. So my background is in my 23rd year of professional coaching and a little bit of consulting as well. I have a degree from the University of Northern Iowa in communications, and I've also got the highest level of master certification in professional coaching, both in the personal and the corporate realm. So that all was born just out of a great desire, really truly a lifelong desire. I mean, even being very young in my life, feeling extremely devoted to bringing out the best in people, no matter what circumstance. And I think I learned some of those lessons very early in my life, just around people that I was raised by, but also huge athletic background. And so know that very key, those very key things that make a person really soar and be able to bring out their best and maximize their potential and capability. So I couldn't wait, really honestly, in my life to begin partnerships with folks, whether it be, again, in the personal realm or a lot of leadership work, a lot of work in the corporate realm to bring out the best in an individual or a team. And so that's my life's work. That's my life's
Super.
passion. Can't get
Yeah.
enough.
I love it. And for anybody who's had the opportunity to see Heather in action in front of clients in teaching and training, and that's what I've really enjoyed about our conversations, Heather. And often I explain it. I love being able to sit in organizations and walk the hallways and the facilities and the production floors and look, listen, and lead conversations about how we keep doing this better. What's it going to take for the organization of tomorrow to be able to thrive in a way that brings out the very best in its people? And Heather, I know that your work is very much centered around bringing out the best in people, and we've got some, certainly there are organizations out there who struggle to do that,
Yeah.
right? and
Yes.
and you know, I think you and I probably seen it's an evolution process, right? You never get this 100%, but what are we
Absolutely.
doing with our leaders to be able to help them bring out the best in other people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And you're right. That word is so perfect, Selena. Evolution. It's the just all throughout the stages of understanding what that looks like in a particular organization. Absolutely.
So let's take it a little bit deeper for where we want to go today in terms of organizations amidst change. So we know that part of what we're exploring in this series through these episodes is how we respond to change in organizations, how we adjust and adapt, or maybe even where we struggle. And as you look at your own experience with such a wide variety of companies, have there any particular things that you've noticed about what makes it hard to change in companies? Where do we resist, or maybe where some of those pain points are when we're just having a tough time with change?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think I would start by saying this. One of the themes or threads, if you will, is we know people can change, and we know that because whether I mean, just even look at this year, everybody has been required to change in some sense, and so I think in organizations where it becomes the things that make that change difficult for people, it's that old cliche, kind of the unknown, that question mark that causes uncertainty for folks, and just uncertainty even in the midst of some excitement with change. I think there's always that, whether it be anticipation or nervousness or anxieties sometimes because of the question mark that looms with how do we go through this? What does the playbook or the rule book look like going through change? What does that mean for me? We are inherently kind of selfish creatures, and not a negative way. I don't say that in any negative sense. We certainly are concerned with ourselves, and that's very important. That's very important for people to be able to think that way. So I think that inherent question mark and how does this land on my own doorstep? Is one of the biggest difficulties that people have. And I see that even with people who are very positive about the change that's being suggested or recommended. So it's for me, when I study that, I'm really looking at how large is the question mark in this organization through change. Yeah.
Love that. How large is the question mark, right?
Yeah.
And how does this land on my doorstep? Because our first response is what? What? We're trying to understand it. We're trying to put some boundaries around it. What's the impact of this? And in
Yes.
organizations, I'm fascinated by how those individuals multiply then, right, on teams
Yes.
and within departments and within organizations as we're adapting to change. And I continue to promise, at least to my for the listeners on this podcast, we are trying to make this a fairly COVID free podcast. But coming out of 2020 and going into 2021, I love to remind us, right, that substantial change was around way before that, right? Humans have been
Yes.
doing that since the beginning of the day. But as we think about where we are going into 2021 at the timing of, as we look at this podcast and the conversations we're having this next year of, yeah, how big is that question mark? And in 2020, that question mark was pretty darn big.
Pretty
But
darn
what,
big. Yes. And
yeah,
one, Selena, I would add to that, I love your view as well on that too, that like, let's just keep moving forward and looking ahead. And the thing that just, kind of sat literally yesterday or so was in my mind was how empowering it is to take a step into a new year, even with so many question marks still looming. Every year has question marks looming, right? But such an interesting time in all of our lives. But how empowering it is that people can go into whatever changes are coming ahead and have a deeper understanding of, and look what I'm equipped with. And look, so now I go through this change with a question mark, but look what I'm equipped with. And so I think there is something to be said for that, the strength or the perseverance or the kind of the sort of the thicker skin we've developed to endure what's forward. What is forward?
I love,
Yeah.
yeah, which leads me to my next question and thinking about to your comment of what are you equipped with? So every year, right? We've moved into a new year, and a year is a place mark, right? It's a transition, a transition point. And so when you think about advice that you give to others and some of those all those coaching moments that you have one on one and in groups, in companies, I want to work on that idea of what are you equipped with? So, what is some of the advice you give to others about adjusting to change better? How do you help them identify what they're already equipped with or what they need to seek out?
Yeah, great question. So, the equipped with part is, reminding folks that in their lifetime, they've been through change a lot. And whether that change has been, very small or whatever magnitude of significance that is, They've already been through it. So what they're already equipped with is history and experience, and they know their ups and downs through change. So the awareness of themselves through that, most likely, most people do kind of have that awareness. Now, whether we want to like how we go through change or not is a different story, but knowing that we
Yeah.
have is a big piece. The other thing I always talk about with folks is, and so let's look at what are your strengths. What are the things that make you great, and how do we draw those into how you navigate change? So let's start to talk about that, and we do that. We bring those strengths right alongside whatever change or, you know, action plans that might be being delivered to them in order so that they can execute on change. We really work from a place of where are your biggest muscles and how do we equip our change process with those. So that's sort of that. The other piece I would say that I think is really important for a person to have on board is the knowing that they it is really their responsibility to get what they need through change. So to empower a person with, and so ask the questions you need to ask, learn more about the change, do your homework, do your research. These are all things you can control when it feels like sometimes change delivers uncontrollable circumstances. We are very much in control of learning about that change and growing our knowledge base. So, in terms of what to go out and sort of do or where to activate yourself in change, especially in organizational change, is to sit down with people that have maybe a closer view of what's actually happening and ask some very productive questions. And when I say productive, I've said many, many times to folks, we don't expect anybody to go and just be happy about a change that may seem very difficult or daunting. But what we know for sure is that a productive attitude, one that is solution seeking and idea seeking and
Mhm.
information seeking, is so much more. You're going to have such a better experience going through that change if you can carry that demeanor with you. And it's something that you have to work at for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
and you
yeah,
bring that up of this how we show up in that moment. And it's
yeah,
one of the things I've really appreciated about your work and message over the years of choosing how we show up in that moment,
yeah,
of taking that solution seeking, asking questions, right? Knowing what my strengths are. And I also think about how we bring out the strengths in other people because during
yes,
times, especially during difficult change, is a great time to recognize the strengths in the people around you. I think
yes,
about my own family situations over the years where we hit crisis and we had roles, right? There were people who are different, good at different things. I can think about that in my personal life, and I can think about that, in our teams when difficulty hits. We look to people for expertise or because of their history or because of that muscle that you mentioned, that
yeah,
strong muscle that is just their natural, that they know how to step in.
yeah,
Let's talk a little bit more about that showing up because I think especially during really hard change, there might be listeners in our audience who are going through maybe significant change at work, maybe a job change they weren't expecting,
yeah,
or difficult news. Maybe changes are going on in their organization and they've been tasked with new assignments
yeah,
and they maybe weren't the ones they were looking for, right? Thinking about some of those really hard, or maybe betrayal. One of the things that I continue to explore as part of these conversations is when betrayal or hurts happen at work and how we still choose to take care of ourselves, but how we show up in that time. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you in terms of what that means to you in terms of showing up with your best self during some of those hard times or what you've learned by watching others.
yeah. No, it's, the showing up piece is it resonates so deeply with me. And I kind of go back to times where, in an athletics background that I've got and that my family has, we talk a lot about in track and field even, and this pertains to kind of your question is like when you put your toe on the line, you've got to have your game face on. You've got to be ready. And we don't know what's going to happen in your race, but what we do know is there's a lot you can control. And so be ready. And so
Mhm.
when we talk about showing up into change, difficult change that's sprung on you last minute, a variety of circumstances, it's being able to access sort of in your mind, okay, how do I want to put my toe on the line? How do I want to step up in this? Now, The other piece before I kind of go down that road as well is what I also understand is there's some very realistic emotions for people that go some are just excited as it gets, like, whoo, finally change is coming and excited about what's forward. A lot of people are like, whoa, no idea what's going on. So they come with a difficult kind of a demeanor, and it's more shocked or afraid or what have you. And so when I think about showing up, it's a recognition of, and I ask this question a lot, where do I stand right now with this information? Where do I stand right now with this information? I'm a big proponent of the questions you ask yourself, and giving yourself the time to be able to figure out where you're at so that you can understand, okay, so, and what do I need to be? How do I need to show up moving forward? So being incredibly intentional with that. My recommendations to folks, and including myself, everything I say, this is for myself to digest as well as. And so what does great look like for me in this change? How do I want to take this on so that I can really own my delivery of this change? Because here's the thing. What I always want people to know is yes, the outcome of the change is really important, but the most important thing is, what does your character look like? How do you show up? What do you want people to see of you? And what do you want people to know of you? And purely so that you are seen as incredibly valuable in your organization, and one that too is very realistic, that we honor the difficulty of change. So it's not just put your positive face on, it's put your productive face on, and navigate all of the emotions and all of the circumstances with a desire to improve or desire to tackle, and know that it is also okay when you feel a little exhausted from that change. And
Mhm.
so when people get to that place and how they're showing up, so let's say today I just show up very very exhausted, very short fuse, I'm on my last nerve, that I figure out a way to communicate that to someone so that I can say, hey, I'm having a day and I need a little help getting to the next step of change. So it's a looking to people around you as well to help you come along. But the thing I zero out for everybody, and this includes myself, is any sort of lingering negativity about change. Because what we know is it begins to compound, and then there's never a real adoption to what that change is is able to deliver. So we never get a real feel for that, and we can't assess it correctly. So that's where I'm at in terms of showing up. Yeah.
Oh, Heather, that's spot on for this. We just have so many opportunities in that moment, right? To decide
Yeah.
who we're being in this moment. And to your comment on toe on the line, when you think about, any athlete who's willing to put that on right then, right? And put
Yes.
it all on that line, they've done the work behind it, right?
Yes.
They've done the hard work to get to that moment of putting toe on the line. And I think that speaks to the rest of us, is that we'll continue to explore topics around self-care and how we do that to get us ready to put our toe on the line. But when that toe is on the line, a couple of the notes of, I love your point about, right, where do I stand right now with this information, so
Yes.
that I can do a quick assessment. I think for our listeners, that's a great takeaway, to say, where do I stand right now? So that I can get an accurate read of, okay, I'm going to feel it. This is what I'm feeling, and this is what it means for me. And here are my next best choices. But then your next point of, what does great look like in this
Yeah.
during this change? It may not be a great change, but what
Right.
is great for me? What does being great in this moment look like? And it's my best version of myself.
Yes.
And then to your last point, just that reminder, we want to encourage all of our listeners, is that none of us have to do this alone.
Right.
And so to access your resources, to tap into someone and say, like you said, I'm having a day, or I'm having a moment and I'm showing up in this moment and I'm struggling. And to
Yes.
be able to reach out and tap into somebody else, even if it, and I love always that reminder that if I'm asking them just to listen, or I'm asking them to help me problem solve, right? I need you to listen for 5 minutes. I need you to listen for an hour, or I need you to listen for 10 minutes. And then I need some help, right? Problem solving this or thinking through, because then my listener's going to show up differently for me in that moment too.
Yeah, I really do. And I think as you said that, Selena, too, I think for anyone who has the great opportunity to lead people, I think making that for as a leader to really make the space for people to show up that way and to be one that hears through the how a person is evolving through the changes we've delivered to them, and that a leader really refrains from turning that person away or telling them how they should feel or any of that, that rather just embrace where they're at and then be a great coach to that person right through that, so that their show up continues to be really good. We leaders have a lot to
Yeah.
do with a person's show up, right?
And you and I will always hold leaders to that higher level of accountability, and I think that's an important message for leaders in all types of roles, and it's also good in our relationships. In
Absolutely.
that moment, my marriage, right,
Yes.
family,
Every
relationships,
day.
all of it, every day. Oh, Heather, thank you for sharing those insights. So, as our listeners get to know this podcast, we are other podcasts do the same, but we've changed up some questions for kind of bringing all of these ideas together and having a little bit of fun as we wrap up the episode. So I'm just thrilled with what you just shared with us, and going back to, hopefully our listeners will take away that toe on the line, right? That moment of
Yes.
change, and what showing up means for them, what great looks like, and how do I stand with this, and that they don't have to do it alone. I think those are all really just neat things for everyone to consider. So let's give them a couple other things about you and about us, and
Great.
as we wrap up our time together here today. So
Yeah.
our lightning round. So those of you who are just getting to know me, and folks that I have joining with me on this podcast, I'm a word fanatic. I love words. Scrabble in our household was an Olympic sport growing up, and still to this day, when we can gather, there are major games and lots of competition that happens. So I've chosen a word for Heather, and it is perseverance. So Heather, just share with our audience for a couple of minutes what it means to you. What do you think of when you hear the word perseverance?
Yeah, I love that word, Selena. I do. So I think, when I think about that word, it's the character quality or what people show, how people deliver perseverance is probably the thing that makes the hair stand up on my arms the most. I love,
Mhm.
and again, it doesn't matter if they ever reach the end goal. It's like the great effort that people bring in even just daily circumstances to just get through and show themselves they can. Like, I love that. That's my jam. I love watching people put
I
effort forward. Yes.
Yeah, I loved when that word showed up for you, just for knowing you over these years of how
Yeah.
not only do you persist, right, and that perseverance, but how you really want to help others do the
Yeah.
same, and stick to it, whatever
Yep.
that is, right? Just to be able to see it through.
Right. Right.
Yeah, good. So I love, some of the things we're trying to do on this particular show is just continue to provide resources or ideas about content that's out there. Do you have a favorite, something you're reading now or that you're reading next?
So a couple things. I think one is that I'm reading now. I kind of just finished, rereading, and I don't know if you've heard of this book, but it's Leadership and Self-Deception. So I reread it recently because it's such an intriguing book. It's kind of told in a fable format, but it talks a lot about how we see ourselves and how we see others and really what we believe about people and how we talk to them as a result of that. And it just reminded me through that.
Nice. I'm so glad you picked that one. That's not one that has come up, and I think that would be there's just a lot of digging in that you can do. And I love your point about rereading a book. I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things that we don't give enough credit to. That when we revisit a book, we process it a little differently because we're in a different space, right? We're going to
Yes.
pull out different things, and
Yes.
how important that is. All right. And Heather, my love of laughter and humor. And so I want to know what makes you laugh in life. What just gives you a good old laugh?
You know me, Selena. I mean, I love to laugh, but I'll tell you what, I have been very blessed. We've got two children, and I love them both with all my heart and soul, and their personalities are each very unique. My daughter is 16 and hilarious. And I will tell you what, from like literally from the time she gets out of bed to she doesn't even try. She just says such funny things and it just kills me. So I'm usually rolling or some tears are rolling down my face because she says something so funny and she's got this little edge. She's got this little edge to her and it is a kill. So I'm fortunate that
Yeah.
she's in our household. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and all of us, whether we've got people in our household, people in our workspace, and even if we're just missing some people right
Right.
now, just given this time in life, finding that humor, right? It's just such an
Yes.
important part of managing change and not making light of it, but finding those moments where we can just get a good belly laugh in. I love it.
Yes.
And those other people who lift us up in our lives.
Right.
Heather, what a pleasure to spend some time with you for this episode. And I just hope that everybody listening can pull out a few of those great pieces from Heather's wisdom and insight. And as both of us, I know, continue just to want to keep learning, want to keep growing, and wanting to help make a difference in others.
Well, Selena, you are certainly doing all of that good work and you have been for so many years. And, for podcast listeners, I mean, you can't get enough of what Selena is saying or doing. And it's always so fun for me to get to listen to her. And I've learned so much from you. And so to be able to go through and to do this work with you today is just, I mean, I'm treasuring it as an awesome way to end this year and to begin the new. Thank you.
Super. Well, we will look forward to lots of conversations coming up. And to all of our listeners, please check out our website, workplacechameleon.com. We will continue to post episodes and drop them available to you on all the major platforms. So stay tuned and the conversation will continue. Take care, everybody.